Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It was the Spa race of the year. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but I look forward to talking about it. Welcome, Rob.
Oh, okay, welcome. It sounds like you've got a little bit of a down on it. I gotta say, we'll get into it. I loved it today. Absolutely loved it. I didn't think we
I'm not saying
had.
I didn't like it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
just saying it. We'll talk about it. The
We'll
Belgian
talk about it.
GP.
We'll get there. We
Yeah.
have action packed because we've got a fairly big news and social for the first time in about 3 weeks because stuff seemed to happen. We've not only got the race, we've got to pull the bones out of the sprint as well. We've got return of DRS, which is fantastic. We've got pit lane pull. And then stick around at the end. We got some exciting news about who's next week's guest is. So we better jump in and let's jump into the greedy end of the track, which is the or is it? I'm not. I'd like to see what you think about this one. So, the New York Post put a story out there that venues in Vegas are being ordered to pay up big style. Otherwise, F1 is threatening to obstruct their views of the race. So, put up screens, probably those blue fabric
The blue
barriers like we
fencing.
saw in Canada. And what they're basically saying is that they're looking at any of the venues that have got visibility of the track. So, anybody along the 3.8 mile circuit that can see the race, they're looking at the fire directives of a building and saying, based on your capacity, you will need to pay $1,500 per head. So,
$1,500 a
yeah,
head.
a head. Whether or not you actually fill it to that capacity or not, they're not going to get into the whole kind of like, well, how many people have you actually got in there during the race that could see it? They're just going to say, if your venue can hold 200 people, you'll pay 200 times 1,500. That's according to the race, as a letter that's gone into the New York Post. And so far, none of the major like outlets have picked it up. Anybody that's quoting it is kind of the smaller websites, and they're all quoting this New York
The
Post letter.
Post,
So,
right?
what do you think, Brian?
Well, first of all, the New York Post is not exactly the beacon of journalistic, integrity and intelligence. However, this doesn't surprise me at all. Does it surprise you at all if it were to be true? It wouldn't, at least for me, especially
It
being
doesn't,
Vegas.
and yeah, you're in Vegas, right? Now, F1 isn't going to suddenly bring more money to Vegas, although it is going to have a big impact to the amount of people. We just saw the number of people that went to Canada. Imagine that kind of people descending on Vegas for a weekend. Not only are you going to get all the stuff that they'll spend on in terms of F1 merch, but they're going to spend money in restaurants and casinos, right? So, well, part of me is there going, oh man, that's greedy. I'm also thinking, I don't know if this happens at every other venue in the world where you've got visibility over a track. Does F1 ask for some
In
kind of
Monaco,
viewing tax,
right
right?
in
And if
Baku.
they do, let's say you can hold 100 people and you've got to pay 1,500 a head. How much do you think you're going to make extra in take-ins that
Not
weekend?
enough.
Do you think you break it? You don't think
No,
you make enough?
no. And first of all, if they're using, as we read, the fire marshal kind of approach, you ever been in one of those buildings, like in a restaurant, and it says this area can hold 4,000 people, and there's like 20 people in there, and it's crowded? I mean, there's no way.
True,
There's
true.
zero chance that would happen. But if this is true, it doesn't surprise me. There are a lot of restaurants on the Strip, as you know, that have a nice view of the Strip, but they're not really fancy restaurants per se. And if you told me I had to go to some little dumpy cantina and pay like $4,000 to have a table because they're going to charge the cantina $1,500, forget that, man. So I don't know. It's if the story's true, it's a little disappointing, but not a surprise.
I'll give you my 10 cents slash pence on what I think it is. I can't imagine that Formula One sprung this on the venue with a few months to go. I feel as that when this was all being planned out, this was probably in the works. And I imagine a lot of the big organizations that this is chump change to have already paid it and forgotten about it months ago. And
Sure.
now the last few little venues that probably can't afford it and were hoping it was all going to go away are now throwing it in the air and making a big stink about it and seeing if they can get away with it.
Right, like Joe's Cannabis Hut. It's a lot of money.
Anyway, moving on. This is something I did. I was bored and I was looking at. I was doing the race week poster that we always do. So as part of doing the race week poster, I have to go and get a map of the track and copy and paste it onto the poster. And I was kind of pasting it on. I was like, good old Spa. I love the outline of Spa. And it kind of struck me that actually I've always thought it was either a gun, like an Uzi, or the alien head. For some reason, it does strike me as having the profile of the alien of the film. And then kind of this idea of a bird in flight hit me. So I did a stupid little post of those three things kind of properly clip arted together, nothing professional, and threw it out into the ether. And we actually got quite a lot of take up. It drove a lot of debate. Now, the one I missed, which now looking at it in hindsight, I absolutely should hold my head in shame. Hot glue gun
Hot
was
glue
the one
gun's
that
a
came
good one.
back. Yeah, hot glue gun, like the number of people that came back, or the cordless drill slash screwdriver um, came back as kind of number two. We had the Atlanta Falcons logo in reverse, a Star Trek phaser, a Romulian, I
Romulan.
don't even want
Romulan.
Romulan. I don't
Yeah.
watch Star Trek. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's right.
A disruptor pistol, a Minecraft axe, the head of a pterodactyl, Father Christmas lying on his side with a long arm, and then which I couldn't get, but take a look at it, and then when you see it, you'll see it. I actually replied back to the person who said that and said maybe, but it kind of looks like a wizard with a cape who's blowing around their back. But anyway, you'd have to take a look at that, and then basically a million variations on which specific type of gun it might be from all different people that play Modern Warfare or what have you. A number of them came back.
What I took the time to make a GIF of what I thought it was. I sat there and I
you
figured
did.
it out, and I turned it into a GIF, which was not easy for someone old like me. And I figured it out, and I used gardening shears. And I'm not saying it was perfect, but I showed how it worked. You can't even give me a shout out, man.
I was holding that back, but I saw you about to chip in, so I thought I'd let you jump in
I mean,
first.
do I need to pull out an extra lead and come in and do some pit stop practice and make the team get ready? Oh, I'm sorry. We'll hold on to Max being a petulant child.
Yeah, I mean, the shears I was just about to give you, and the gold star for effort would go to you because you made an animated GIF out of it. It was I was holding that back to the end, Brian. I did appreciate that. So. Yeah. Right, let's get through to some real news. You picked up a few pieces here.
Yeah, exciting parts. The F1 Academy, right? Which obviously we had the W Series last year, which ran out of funds, and Rob and I have been interested on what they're doing with the Academy. If you remember, I actually said when this whole conversation started, the reason something like the WNBA has been at all successful is really because the NBA has brought it under its wing. And that was kind of my conversation months and months ago, if not even almost a year. And so what's great is that the Academy, being part of F1, now 10 teams that we have will sponsor a car and be part of a car, livery and other things, in the Academy. So that as of the 2024 season, all 10 F1 teams will have one driver and their livery on a car in the all-female racer series. And there are teams today, there are 5 teams today with 3 drivers and 3 cars each. Go Megan Jilks, whatever it may be. And so then in 2024, we'll have 10 of those teams nominated by an F1 team, and the remaining 5 drivers in the series are set to be supported by other partners, with announcements coming soon. I think this is great. I think if you really want to build a product that people pay attention to, you got to kind of build it off of the thing that has the foundation and the base. And so
the one thing, go on, carry on, Brian.
I was gonna say the one thing they got to do is get this thing broadcast instead of watching the results, a couple weeks later. They got to figure out how to get it as like a support race at the races that's going on. Go ahead. Am I stealing your thunder?
You are.
It's not in the notes.
No, it's not in the notes. And both of these two documents, articles that me and you both found, cover exactly what you've just said. And I was like, oh, it's a shame it's not going to be part of the fold even more. And then I was watching friend of the show, I hope, Antonia Rankin, put out a TikTok that was explaining this thing. She appended at the end, and I haven't been able to find it on. I grabbed this one from BBC Sport, but she said that actually it's the calendar's going to be in sync. So the F1 Academy is going to follow the F1 calendar round and be part of the support race setup.
Good.
Now, if they are, that is amazing because they should get TV coverage, or at least they'll be in a place where there's cameras and we can probably watch the race, if not live, later. Because, like you say, I follow F1 Academy on Twitter, and you just have to still get these bite-sized chunks of who did what, where they finished, because it's like you can't watch it online at all.
I followed on YouTube, and so I end up watching the highlights on YouTube days after the event, and you don't even get the whole race.
So that'd be awesome if it's all part of the weekend. That'd be fantastic.
It's going in the right direction. Let me say that.
Yeah,
I'm really excited.
Agree.
You hit this next one.
So they announced a while back that Ferrari sporting director Laurent Mekies, I don't know, was heading over to AlphaTauri. Yeah, I'm great with pronunciation, me. Heading over to AlphaTauri to be team principal, replacing Franz Tost. And it had been announced a while back. But the way it was announced, it kind of had that whole next season vibe about it. And then literally days before we were going to get practice starting, they just go, yep, no, immediate effect. He's not going to Spa. So, Laurent, in you come. So, wow, okay. But that took me by surprise. That wasn't the most surprising thing to happen, was it, Brian?
No, Alpine. Alpine decided what they were going to do. Every week we have an Alpine story, and it's the third week in a row where we've had leadership changes at Alpine, and we've tried to figure out what it meant. First, Otmar wasn't reporting to whomever, Rossi, and then next week Rossi's not the CEO, and then this week, well, boy, they really went to town. And so, first off, Otmar, who we like very much and think very highly of, and we almost drafted him as our team principal on our team. Otmar is done. He's not only done, he's done now. Like, as the weekend ended, the team's flying back to Enstone and getting ready for the summer break. Otmar's off to, Jamaica or wherever he likes. He's done. He does have a 1-year gardening leave. I'll get into this in a second. But so in the last 18 months, Alain Prost left the team. Otmar joins. He had his 100 race plan. Piastri got angry and left. Alonso got angry and left. Rossi loses the titles, we already said, of CEO. Otmar's out, and they also, at the same time, lost Permain. And so then also Pat Fry, their technical lead, decided to go to Williams, and that was announced. And not all this is happening right at the same time. But it's just wild. They went from having a 100-race plan to losing a 2-times World Drivers' Championship, the red-hot rookie, and the guy who was going to execute that plan in like 30 races or 35 or 40 races.
And it all just smacks of me, obviously, on the inside, knowing everything about what's going on at Alpine. It just smacks of people very, very high up in the establishment with too much money and too high expectations and not living the real world around F1. Now, I think this is Otmar, but I can't see that it was directly, I can't find anything that came directly from him, but it seems to be attributed to him that he was saying that the vision of being regular winners by 2026 isn't reality. And that is the plan from up on high that Alpine should be. And if you can't be on board to make that happen, then, you shouldn't be here. And it looks like Otmar, I think, is trying to be a true gent and sort of saying, well, it's an untenable position. If that's the vision and I don't buy it, then it makes sense to part ways, making it sound like it was mutual, but I'm not sure. But if that is the directive coming from up on high, me and you both work in corporate America, right, where you have mission statements for each year, and we're going to be the number one provider of blah, blah, blah. And, that's what you're shooting for. But no one really probably believes, especially if you're, Joe's marijuana hut. I don't believe that he's going to be the leading provider of marijuana in America, right? But he can have that as his objective. Because if they've set that out, they're going to be repeat winners and always challenging for race wins by 2026. That's a couple of seasons away. And look where they are right now. I mean, what the hell does he expect?
Well, then, agreed. And then Planet F1 and Sky Deutschland had some good conversations, at least Sky Deutschland did, with Otmar. And he said, it takes time. He's 33 or 34 races into his tenure. He even said, quote, I signed some good people from other teams, but they're still stuck in their contracts, and they won't be here till 2024, or in one case, 2025. You can't push development if people aren't there. And then my favorite quote was something to the effect of, you can't get 9 women pregnant at the same time and have a baby in a month. I'm like, well, that's one way of using a quote.
I saw that as well. Was that directly from him? Because I saw somebody
according
put it
to
on
Sky Deutschland, it was.
Okay. Because I saw somebody put a picture of Otmar and put that as the tagline down the bottom. I was like, I really hope he said that.
I hope he said it too. But he is going on gardening leave for a year, according to this. And then again, if these quotes are accurate, the bad news is that it'll be a year before we can do it again, unquote. Man, that sucks. And again, Pat Fry left, not just sporting director Alan Permain, but Pat Fry also leaving to go to Williams, where they have not had a CTO, Chief Technical Officer, since Patty Lowe left in 2019, who Patty Lowe didn't come across great in the Drive to Survive season that they did while he was there. So I'm excited for Williams. B, I'm confused by Alpine. And C, I'm disappointed for Otmar.
Yeah. Agree. Well, this doesn't feel like this really warrants following such big news of that, but they've pushed the tyre blanket rule over safety concerns.
Tell me more.
Well, you're the tyre guy, and I wasn't interested in this at all. But they've basically said that, yes, they want to do sustainability, but coming out of the pits on cold tyres that haven't been warmed up is with 1,000 horsepower under your foot is not a good safety feature.
In a car that weighs 10 pounds.
Yeah. So they've kicked that one down the line a bit. And then you got all amongst the because it's your kind of IQ. You got all amongst the kids broadcast, didn't you?
Just for the record, Rob, kids aren't dumb; they just aren't mature. So you can say IQ if you like. It just shows how low yours is. And so the Hungary kids broadcast. Oh, shots fired! Do you want me to come in for pit stop practice? So the kids broadcast in Hungary, which I did not see, but I will talk about watching the highlights of shortly. Two things came of it. First off, this was my favorite story of the week. By far, bar none, 100% favorite story. Nico Rosberg fumes after Sky F1 Junior calls him Britney in the Hungary GP broadcast. Now, you can see it on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. And so you can see a clip of this, like kind of grainy I've seen. I haven't gone back and watched the whole thing.
He does it twice. It's brilliant.
basically explains to the kids that someone once called him Britney, didn't like it, and then the kids did it, and he got angry and asked for an apology. And at first they're like, "What?" And then he goes, "No, that was really bad. You have to apologize." I said, "Yes." The name, just for everyone's benefit, was courtesy of former Williams teammate Mark Webber. And so in the 2006 Brazil Grand Prix, Rosberg drove into the back of Webber, broke his front ring, crashed. And then as he drove past the scene of the accident, Webber said Britney's in the wall because of his long blonde hair and likeness to Britney Spears. So, a great name. And Max has actually done this on an F1 video. I don't know if you ever saw this about a year ago, because maybe 2 years. I'm a nerd for this stuff. When they were naming former champions, when Max got to 2016, they had to go backwards. He said Britney or Nico Rosberg. He did it on purpose, and I don't know if people caught it, but I remember it because I can't remember like my kids' teachers' names, but I remember that. And so, anyway, what do you think of this story? Nothing burger or just fun?
No, it was funny, but the way you just told it, unless I've seen a different clip, he doesn't explain to them in that clip about he used to be called Britney.
No, that was
off.
It's
like that must have happened off camera in the
Correct.
background. They must have been asking him about his nickname, and he told him a secret. And then they're wrapping up some review of something, and the girl goes, "Thanks, Britney." And then he gets really angry. He's like, as an adult dealing with a kid, he's kind of like, "I told you that in confidence. That's not good." And then she goes, "Sorry, Britney," and just does it again. It was the second jab, the body punch that I really loved. But,
I loved it too. And then this one's weird, and I'm sorry. We've been trying not to cover this for quite some time. But it can't sit under the radar anymore. So first of all, Rob and I were in Canada, standing on a street corner, waiting for an Uber to show up to take us to the race. And I said, "Hey, did you see this thing about Danica Patrick?" And again, we've ignored it on here because it's kind of weird. And we just let's leave it alone. She was on a podcast talking about aliens altering our DNA. Right. And so we left that alone. We're like, that's okay. She's a little do out there. And so we'll leave it alone. It's fine. Then she was on the children's broadcast. As I said, I had two things about this. First of all, I wouldn't put Danica Patrick near a kid if she believes aliens are altering our DNA, but that's a different problem. And then this week, Elizabeth Blackstock, who's one of the co-authors of the Racing with Rich Energy book, she wrote an article on Jalopnik, and I love Jalopnik, and I love the people, men and women who write there. She was interviewed, not by Elizabeth, but by somebody else, Danica was. She claimed the feminine mind can't handle the aggression required in racing. What? I'm sorry. This pushed it over the edge where I just had to take 2 minutes and say, Danica Patrick, what are you doing?
She's already had too many minutes, so let's move on.
Moving on.
My school friend Andy has contributed many musical masterstrokes to this here pod. We've had the Valtteri version of Valerie for the Come on the Podcast song, which is still one of my favorites. We've had the mashup when the Queen passed away. We had the mashup of The Chain and the national anthem. We've had the road trip music to Canada. We've got the Pit Lane Pool jingle. We've got the Miami GP. You name it. We've had some. Oh, the sandwich song. The guy's a musical genius. Even when this man gets drunk,
which we're not saying he was.
No, he admitted it in the WhatsApp to me. He said, "I'm drunk at a pub skiffle night with the Albon Skiffle Company of Hastings. I got called up during the skiffle song to do a solo on the kazoo, so I thought I would sneak in a certain theme song to see if you can see what it is. So we're going to share it with you now. I'm pretty sure you'll hear what theme tune it is. So you got it lined up, Brian?"
I do, and if people could listen carefully during the applause, you'll catch
the applause, the little
else.
Extra Easter egg at the end is fantastic.
Here it is. Here it comes. Just wait. The Easter egg. There it was. The hey now at the end was, first of all, the kazoo was amazing, and the Formula One theme was amazing, but the hey now just brought it home.
And did you know?
Did I know?
Did you know that the
Did I
hey
know?
now is actually hidden in every track he's done for us?
I mean, I've noticed it in others. Is it in every one?
I think maybe he's missed one,
Like
but
the
almost
Miami
every
one, I don't
single
remember
one.
there being, maybe, I don't know.
The sandwich rant has got a hey now snuck in there.
Yeah.
The
Hey now.
Valtteri's got a hey now. The
Yep.
pit lane pool in the pits one has got a
Yes.
hey now snuck in there. And normally he sends me like a really zoomed in shot of like the wavelength where you can see that it's hidden in there. It's like a little Easter egg every single time. So even when drunk, he manages to sneak a hey now in at the end. So
I love it. I mean,
Andy,
the hey
you're an
now, you
absolute
can't get
legend.
enough
We
of
love
it.
it.
Yeah, legend. I did a meeting recently with about 100 people in my organization. I started the meeting with hey now, and then we started. No one knows about the podcast. And then Paul's review this week starts with a hey now. That's the way the world should work. We should all greet each other with a hey now. But speaking of which, it is.
Oh, come on! You've robbed me of a moment now. I was going to go for a
Go.
hey now. It's time to open the video vault.
And I'm going to start with listener Lee's new opening for us. Thank you, Lee. Squeaky. Good. Oh, loud. Good.
Well, it's better than
It's
opening
better
Granny's
than-
front gate like you had last time.
I know, it's good. It's good. Thank you, Lee. All right, 4 quick ones. Here we go. First off, you know me. I had to go back to my roots, the Hilton Channel, even though I'm not a lifetime gold like I am at Marriott. Bringing the stay to Silverstone, Hilton Channel. It's only a minute. Lando and McLaren partner Hilton, and they brought the stay to camping at Silverstone. It was cool. If you remember last year's Hilton video at this time, they went to the McLaren Technical Center in Woking, and they set up like indoor a couple rooms for people, and they watched the race and things from there. This, and maybe it wasn't even for Silverstone, but it was a race because it was evening, if I remember right. Doesn't matter. This year, they brought camping to Silverstone, less than a minute. If you love Lando, or you're a Hilton Honors member, or you're really bored, check it out. Couple videos from the F1 channel. I'm not normally like a mainstream F1 channel. I have one or two, but there were two good ones. First off, top 10 unexpected podium moments. 5 minutes. This was brought on by Lando breaking the trophy at Hungary, and it's on there, Lando's moment. But this is fun, and I have missed these top 10 things they've done. They've only done a couple in the last year. They had a bunch for a while where it was top 10 moments of unexpected overtakes or whatever, and it's gone dry. So F1, if you're listening, and I have to assume you are, more, please, but thank you for that one. And then the last F1 channel one, the second one, F1 Juniors highlights. Here it is. This is what I was talking about. Now, this does not have the Brittany in it, just to be clear, but it was from the last week's Hungarian Grand Prix. 6 minutes. I thought it was interesting. The kids did a great job. I don't know how they're so polished at that age. They're more polished than I am at this age, and I ain't a kid. So kudos to them, and all the drivers who participated I thought were awesome for doing that with the kids, and George was all over the place, so kudos to him as well. But I thought it was fun. 6 minutes. Check it out if you're interested. Rob, did you see any of that coverage or no?
I have. I don't think I've seen this exact video, but I've seen a lot of the stuff with kind of like the overlays that they're doing and kind of almost like got to catch a Pokemon type stuff they're putting over it. And I think it works really well.
It was interesting. It was better. I thought it was better or more well done than what Nickelodeon did for football here in the States. Real football, played by men. And so
where they throw it and don't use their foot.
Well, they kick it too.
So. Anyway, come on, let's off we go.
And the last one, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri, who Rob has a massive crush on.
Massive.
Me too, not as massive. But Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri review iconic toys on the McLaren channel. Not the best one they've ever done, but with Barbie coming out last week, they got on the bandwagon, brought out iconic toys, and the two of them checked it out wearing their pink McLaren hats, which I thought was a little bit of pandering, but that is okay, and that will close the door, at least for me. Rob, anything you'd like to add?
Slam that door shut.
We shall do so. All righty. Woo! Brings us to the race weekend. It was a long weekend. It was a sprint weekend, and I really appreciate, I'll join Matt Bishop's comment, it's a real pain in the rump when they have these things happening on Friday that matter, and some of us have work. And, I
commented on his tweet, actually, about, do you think it would work better if it was twisted round? So if they did sprint shootout and sprint on the Friday and then just do quali on a Saturday, so you've got Saturday and Sunday is like the main event. It's the Grand Prix, qualifying and the race, and then Friday is your sprint thing, because practice really is a bit pointless on a sprint weekend. It just all
But you
feels too.
still need something, right? To get.
Maybe, why not? We didn't win it this weekend, did we? Here we go. Look, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Because nothing really happened in practice. It was wet. Couldn't really go out and run. It got too wet. I'm not even going to talk about practice.
Long
it was
weekend.
wet.
Let's move on. So then we went to quali on Friday.
Well, it's still wet.
Yeah, it was, but drying.
Yeah. Which, when do you want to talk about wet tires? Do we get it out of the way before we get into the race?
Sure. If you
yeah,
like
just
to
quick. Hit it now. Okay, so wet tires, right? I think Paul kind of mentioned it. I saw it come up again today. Post race, I saw some tweet. I think it was one of the drivers might have mentioned it. It's almost like, what's the point of the wet tire in the era that we are right now, where when there's that much spray, for valid safety reasons, they don't want to go out. And we'll get to it maybe when we get to the start of the race. Actually, maybe we can reference it again then as to what happened with the wet tire there. But if you're looking for sustainability and you're looking to drop the number of tires, don't bother making or bringing the wet tire anymore.
If you're not
just don't bother.
Right.
Just don't bother, because as soon as it's too wet, or when it's wet enough to go on full wet, you know that we won't start a race. You know that we won't start a session. If it got so wet during a race, I've seen them red flag races in the past before when we get so much standing water. So it's like once it gets conditions
Japan,
for a full wet.
Yeah.
That got delayed though, didn't it? I mean, like,
no.
You started and it was dry, and then did that one get red during? Did it?
Well, there was a crash. You remember Sainz almost hit the thing. Gasly had the board on his car.
So if whenever the surface water gets that bad that you're either going to stop a race or not start it, then what do you? If you want to cut down the amount of rubber and the logistics of hoiking them around the world, get rid of the blue tire.
You're not wrong, and actually, you're a little bit ahead of yourself though, because in the sprint they do exactly what you said. They had to start because they were behind the safety car on full wets, and then they all came in every other time for inters. But we'll get to that. So in quali on Friday at 10 a.m. Central, right in the heart of meeting time for most of us. We lost Q1. We lost Hulkenberg to a hydraulic issue. They fixed it, but couldn't get him around in time. Danny Rick to track limits. He would have made it into Q2. Logan, Joe, and Alex. In Q2, we lost Esteban, Valtteri, Kevin, Pierre, and Yuki. So we saw a lot of teams dropping their drivers out in groups now, Q1 and 2. And then Max took pole. I thought I really enjoyed it. Yeah, keep going.
I did as well. And if we just go back over a couple of pieces in there, Max was almost out in Q2.
Very close, 10th.
That
was the beginning of his anger over the radio.
Yeah, that's where probably the Hulk version of Max started to kick in over the weekend. But we had that, and we got a little bit of foreshadowing of the McLaren setup. They kind of said they weren't going to be fast here, so they kind of leaned in to a wet setup. And every time we got into the right zone of the operating position for that car, they were rockets through those other sectors.
If everybody was slower, they were still about the same pace as dry.
No,
that had dried out, and they were nowhere.
That's the that's the problem. They really gambled on a wet race. Which
they did.
Which it works for the sprint. We'll talk in a minute. It works for the sprint, but they needed it to carry on raining all weekend, because once today was dry. We'll get to the race soon. But no, I thought Piastri was a rocket through qualifying, and to go and throw him kind of self up there was just fantastic.
Yeah, first of all, one thing that I learned as the broadcast started for quali, Mike Crack admitted they were the 5th best team. Like, it came out, they talked to Mike Crack, team principal Aston Martin, holds the gasoline in his fridge, occasionally too long. And so they talked to Mr. Crack, and he's like, yeah, we're the 5th best team. Like, thanks, Mike, for validating what I've been saying for a while over here, and we've seen. That's rough. I mean, they were the 2nd, if not 3rd at worst, best team to start the season, and people are catching them. But I was surprised by McLaren. Like, as we went through this practice, first of all, Lando went off in Q1, and I thought that was an amazing save. I know he damaged his floor. I don't know if he got enough credit. Did you see him go off there, and he's running through grass, tarmac, and then gravel, and he somehow got it pointed loosely in the right direction? I mean, that was wild. As you said, Max almost went off in Q2, but Piastri and McLaren, like, that to me was just I loved watching it. I became an even bigger Oscar and Lando fan this weekend, but I don't understand something. Like, help me with this. And we'll get into this more, but just let's talk about it for a minute now. I would put, and maybe I'm uneducated, but I put Spa and Silverstone not too far apart in terms of pace of track and the amount of downforce. They're different, but it's far different
they're very
than Hungary.
different. I think
Hungary is, in my mind, so different.
yeah.
So how did they run well at Hungary? How did they run well at Silverstone, but then look like crap around all of Spa when it was dry? Was it because they were so gambled on a wet race?
Yeah,
And they figured they would take advantage of it?
They loaded up the downforce
Why?
for the wet race 100%.
Like,
And then
on purpose?
yeah, because I mean, look what happened. They were one. It had rained all weekend, and it just ran out of rain, unfortunately, today for them. Had it have been wet today, they would have been right up there. We saw the pace of that thing. We'll get now in a minute when we get into the
Yeah, let's go to
sprint
Saturday.
shootout. But they lent into a wet setup, and it worked for 75% of the weekend. Unfortunately, it didn't
Not
work on
Sunday.
Sunday. So yeah.
That's all right.
So I mean, just going back to Quali, just quick question because you're the stat man here. A few people in the broadcast were celebrating Charles's pole. Now, does he get? I don't think he gets that as a stat in his career for a pole position because doesn't Max get pole and then serve 5 grid place penalty for the race? So technically, Max got pole position but won't start from pole in the race today because of the 5 position penalty. Because some people kept saying, like, there was even an Instagram post like celebrating Charles's whatever it was 20th pole. It's probably way more than that, but whatever it was. And I'm like, I don't know that Charles gets that as a pole position.
I think it does count as pole
Does
position
it?
for Charles. Yeah, but here's the thing, and there's a lot of like craziness in this. As much as we can debate, and I don't know the answer officially, so I'll look into this. It's a great question. I would actually say there's even more gray area than we toss in there. Go back last year to Brazil. Kevin Magnussen had pole. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
But then the sprint in last year's version, the sprint set the race order, and he didn't win that. So he was, eighth, I think, loosely, give or take a spot, in the race start. So he's officially the only person to ever win pole but not start first on the race. So I'm pretty sure Charles would technically be pole because it's where you start on the race, not where you finish quali. Is my
I'm not sure.
guess.
I'm not sure.
Listeners,
For some
tell
reason,
us
like,
if you know.
yeah, somebody could maybe like tweet us or whatever. I got it in my head that pole position is the person that finishes qualifying,
And I think it's
with
the
the
flip. I
fastest
think
time,
who starts
and
a race first.
then race order is different from pole position because,
But I
like you
think
say,
that
K-Mac had
sprint's-
pole but started 8th.
Right. I think that sprint screwed up the whole way they did it because he
Maybe.
technically started the next race first. even though it
Talking
was
of
a sprint.
sprints, we
Yeah,
got to the
do it.
sprint shootout yesterday.
It was
and
good.
It was wet
It was
again.
Fun. It was fun.
It was fun. It was fun. I was driving to daughter had a swim tournament in Boston, so I missed 1 and 2 of shootout. So I kind of tried to watch it quickly. What the hell happened with Hulk? Why didn't he get out and set a time?
Error. So he had the hydraulic problem in quali, which he couldn't
Yep.
get fixed in time. This was human error. They sent him out too late, and then he went too slow, and then they're like, you got to go faster, and he missed it by a couple seconds. He was literally coming around the
But
corner.
he hadn't even put a first banker in.
No.
They
Or
just
if
decided
he had,
to go.
It was crap. It didn't matter. So he needed to get around. And remember, it's shorter. The sprint shootout is a shorter time. So it's 12, 10, 8. So like 12 minutes, 10
Yeah.
minutes, 8 minutes. And a lap of spa is 2 minutes at full chat. So the amount of time it takes to do an out lap, because you come out of the pits, warm your tires up, and then get there in time, you have to leave yourself some significant time, especially, and we'll talk about traffic here in a minute, especially when there's traffic. And Hulk missed the flag. That was their fault. That's a Haas error.
Wow. Yeah, I basically tuned in at the point where Stroll was becoming best friends with Alonso.
Well, my favorite part was Checo comes around in Q1 or SQ1, I guess, and he's kind of giving himself some time, right? He's kind of like, and I don't know if you saw this highlight, he's kind of giving himself a little space to get going. And the gas man snuck in on the inside of him as they kind of came around the bus stop, and both of them get going. I'm like, whoa. What? And they're like now racing each other down to the hairpin. I'm like, these guys need to do a little better job sorting it out. But anyway.
Yeah, so it was midway through. I actually not even sure it was that far through when they sent Stroll out on mediums.
That
Didn't
was
they?
2. That was in 2. Yeah,
That's two.
SQ2.
So this is where I tuned in. So
This
I
is
said
where the
the
friends
point where
became.
it's making where he's making best friends with Alonso,
They
which
had
is
to
by
be mediums. They had to. Like, they had not declared it a wet quali.
I know, but then why? Just because they haven't declared it a wet quali, when
Yeah.
the track is obviously too wet for to go out on the mediums,
But this is the rule.
then
And this is the dumb thing I hate. One of many parts of the sprint. In a sprint quali, you have to go hard, medium, soft. New tires. And so that's why Lando in Baku
okay.
couldn't go out. He made SQ2, Lando in Baku,
Oh,
couldn't
that's
go
right.
out
Of
because he
course,
didn't have new
any
mediums.
tires left.
New
Yeah,
mediums.
yeah.
He had mediums, but
that.
they were used. So, like, this is the stupidest rule. You have to have new tires of that demarcation. And so that's why, even though people had been on inters, the first person to go to slicks was in SQ2, and it was Lance, and they made him go to mediums instead of softs. And I'm watching this go, why in the hell would you put on medium tires if you're going to go to slicks? Why would you go to
he
softs?
was okay. So I missed that because I was walking from the parking lot here over to the
I
swimming
got your
pool,
back.
trying to listen to it on my phone. Thank you. And I just saw him in there, and I'd seen the radio message from Stroll going, "This is crazy." Like, he didn't want to be out there on these
No.
tires. And then he bins it, and then it red flags a session, and that means that he takes Alonso out as well, so his teammate didn't get a chance to go and put a time in
and Sargent.
and Albon, yeah, all those guys got their Q2 ruined because of a stupid rule. Then, which I'd forgotten that was the rule. I couldn't make head and tail of why on earth they'd done that to him.
I got
so.
your back. I got your back.
Cheers,
The things that annoy me, I'm always here to remember. And then in SQ3, Max and Oscar 0.011 seconds apart. Wow. Checo, I got to say this again with traffic. Sorry. I know there's only 10 cars out. But in SQ3, Checo ends up at the bus stop chicane on a heater, and it looked like there were 40 cars parked there. I don't know how he's supposed to make it through that. That is ridiculous. I know they got out of the way. Some went left so he could kind of cut into the first part of the chicane, and some went far right towards the pits without going off the track so he could cut around the chicane. There's no chance that didn't distract him and ruin a bit of his quality. There's zero chance. I mean, I know he's focused and a professional athlete and one of the best drivers in the world, but when there's 17 cars in your driving line as you pull up at 200 miles an hour, you're going to notice them. Sorry, I'm off my rant.
No, I mean, I can only think that they've all agreed this between the driver community, because it's happening so often these days with kind of these traffic jams of everyone trying to get ready for their next lap and getting the tires in the zone and all this kind of stuff, that if everyone was really that about it, one of them would have kicked off about it and we would have heard a lot more about it. But because they don't, I imagine they've all come to some gentleman's agreement that this is how we do it. So yeah, so that gave us Oscar right up in P2, and it was just brilliant. And then we had where I probably should have segued in the wet tire conversation, which was the sprint race itself.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, I get the spray thing, but if it's too wet, and you could see it happening, they did I think was it 4 or 5 formation laps to help get rid of the
like an
standing water.
interminable amount, but yes, 4.
It probably was. But they just kept going and going to get rid of the spray behind the safety car, which then means that they're all coming on team radio going, yeah, this is inters, this is inters. So if the wet tire is used these days as a mechanism to get rid of standing water off the track, then just buy a couple of trucks with those kind of Hoover things on and send those around instead, because this is dumb. But anyway, we go round and round and round and round and round, and I was waiting for the almost like the complete repeat of like Lewis by himself.
Right. Which Paul, we just talked about 2 episodes ago.
Yeah,
which he
exactly.
clarified why. It was amazing. But first, can I take a quick pause for a second? So because they delayed the start of the sprint by about a half an hour, given how late they needed, 4.5 hours time from sprint quali to sprint, and I woke up early to watch it on record, the sprint quali and then sprint live. I had a half hour time, so I decided to go run a couple miles real quick, and I did that, and I came back, and I had 10 minutes to cool down, grab a water or soda or whatever, beer or whatever, and get to the TV. And I decided to warm up some nachos from the night before. Now I'm in a rush. You're panicked. You're an F1 fan. You're staring at the fridge. You have limited time. You're down to about 7 minutes at this point. Oven is not an option. Not an option at this point. And it's also 9:45 in the morning. So you're making a bad decision to start with having nachos. So what you do is you create Brunchos, which are brunch nachos. You microwave them, which makes you sog the hell out of the chips. The chips are now soggy, disgusting, and horrendous. But
and the temperature of the surface of the sun?
1,000,000 degrees. And so now at least, though, everything that else went with the nachos is warm and tasty, and you just coat it in salsa. I was almost out of one salsa, so I had to use a mix of salsas at the same time. I highly recommend Brunchos. Now, again, there's no crispiness at all. You've sogged these out. The chips are no longer chips. Think of them as something different. But that really made my sprint even all that much better. Back to the program.
Thanks for that little insight into the world of Sat.
You got 4 minutes to
Yeah,
make nachos.
so we got the it was going to then be a rolling start, and it was just a split tactic right down the middle.
Yep.
One of each of the teams peeled into the pits to go and get inters. McLaren pulled it out of the fire for Oscar because, as we were discussing, Max was never going to come in because with them all that close
First.
together and Red Bull being first, he's going to have to sit and wait for 19 other cars to go
Right.
past him or what have you. So, but McLaren was far enough down that they calculated that they could get Oscar in, get him onto Inters, and get him out again before the train
Loved
of
it.
cars behind him came through, and it was judged to perfection. I mean, they couldn't have held him for much longer, otherwise he would have been in behind everything. So Oscar was out and he was leading. Well,
Leading.
not yet, but
Well, yeah, when he came back out, he was. Or not when Max.
no, because
pitted,
Max
he
has got
was.
to pit. Yeah, Max has pitted. But when Max did pit and Oscar was leading, I was like, this is amazing. I love this kid. I like you said earlier on, I got the man crush developing. This kid is just
I
amazing.
got no problem with that. He is amazing, and I love him. Over team radio, he's still so collected and calm and just amazing. It was great. So Oscar, we had Max behind him after everyone did their pits. It was all the opposite of Noah's Ark. It wasn't 2 by 2. It was 1 by 1 for every team. So pick someone first and then someone second for those laps to move to inters. The inters were all, by the way, like boiling. Did you see them when they came in at the end of those 12 laps? They were
like the
literally
nachos.
Yeah, exactly. Brunchos. They were. They boiled
Sorry,
my face off. You got to remember the names. Come on now. And so, but Max, the gas man, Checo, and Lewis were up there. And then Fernando decided, hey, it's my birthday. I'm going to go off, check out the side of the track here. I was surprised by that.
I fancy some Brunchos.
No, I doubt it. No one in the right mind would eat those on purpose. And then the really only point that I think we need to discuss, right? Hamilton and Checo made contact. And I'd like your thoughts. We haven't talked about this. Do you think Hamilton's 5-second penalty was fair given the racing incident that occurred?
Oh, that's a leading question. So you've already decided it's a racing incident.
Well, what happened during the race, I'll say.
Um, I think it's a bit harsh because I do think it's probably more Lewis than it is Checo. I don't think Lewis has fully got the position, but also in the conditions he understeers into him. Is that his fault? He kind of put his car in a position where if it was to understeer, it kind of is. So I thought it was worthy of one of those. It will be reviewed, and then I thought nothing would come of it. So
Yep.
I'm in the camp of I thought it was a little harsh. I think we've seen other incidents that have not been treated as such. When we get to today's thing, like science at the beginning, we maybe come back and
Yes.
talk about that.
Great
So
call.
I thought harsh. I can kind of see why it was given because by the letter of the law it probably is, but thought it was harsh. What about you?
I agree. I thought it was harsh as well. At first, I thought it was ridiculous, and then they showed some more replays, and there was one from the top where you kind of saw Lewis understeer out a little bit towards Checo. Checo didn't
Yeah.
turn in on him. So, like,
Exactly.
I at first I thought it was ridiculous. Then I moved to, I get it, but I still think it's a racing incident in my mind. Now, I will say this: in years past, before this whole side pod thing started, you ran into somebody, you hit their floor, and the floor popped your tire. And the person who did the running into took the penalty. Now
Yep.
we see you bump into somebody, you rip a hole in their side pod, their race is done, you move on.
Oh, they just go backwards. Checo was just in reverse.
Exactly.
Then.
And Carlos, I'd prefer Checo was so in reverse. At first I'm thinking, what is happening? And then he complained about something not being right, went off the track. I'm like, did you do that on purpose? And then they show a big old hole in the side of his car.
And then it just goes to show how important aero is on the cars. It's
Right.
not like years gone by. I think you were able to. I remember Vettel, I think, driving like faster with a piece missing from his car. But these days it seems like you get any kind of disruption, especially in the
Exactly.
side prod area, for where it's kind of trying to downwash the air back under the
Yeah.
phalange or whatever it all is.
Regina
It's
Phalange?
exactly. It just seems to really impact it.
I-
So
it-
I know I enjoyed the sprint race. It was a lot more
Yeah.
feisty than a lot of them.
Agreed.
People we've seen sprints kind of be feisty for maybe the first couple of laps, and then everybody kind of goes, right, don't want to damage my car for tomorrow, so we'll just do kind of a procession for the rest of it. But feistiness out
I won't
there.
bring
So,
back the
yeah.
analogy I used for sprint races in the past when I don't like it
No,
because it
please
was
don't.
inappropriate. But this was that. So let's go to the race.
Okay, so then we get to today. A little bit disappointed to see it dry. I got to be honest. I was hoping for a drying
Because you're an Oscar
race.
fan. You knew the car would perform better in the
It
wet.
just, I just thought it might mean A, we wouldn't have DRS enabled, and B, we just might see a bit more, surprises being thrown up by a slippery track. But
So can we jump quickly to the start? We'll skip the national anthem, even though that was weird, apparently. So here's my problem. If you're going to give Lewis a 5-second penalty for what I thought was a little bit of understeer that took him out of the track, again, I don't know anything. You feel free to tell me I don't know wheel. But Sainz locked up, which is on him. And then in order to fix his lockup, he veered it to the inside so he didn't hit somebody and pushed Oscar both into the wall and into him at the same time. So how is that not more a Sainz problem than Lewis's Checo move was in the sprint, a Lewis problem? To me, that's a 5-second penalty, and I thought Lewis's was maybe a racing incident. So I was
didn't even
confused.
see. I didn't even see a banner come up
None.
saying that the collision between the two was being investigated.
There was one that says it wasn't. No need to investigate came on. At one
Okay,
point.
there we are then. So that was really massively disappointing for two reasons. Because one, Ferrari did look like they had some pace on the dry track because it was a voyage into the unknown today. We'd had pretty much zero running on the dry surface. We didn't know what the tyres were going to do, and Ferrari actually, with Charles, as we'll get on to, kind of looked pretty good. So it was a bit disappointing to see a front runner pulled out and a potential front runner, and to see what Oscar might have done. So we kind of lost Oscar immediately, and Sainz just went backwards, and I really don't know why they kept him out for as long as they did.
I was surprised when he pitted and came back out. He retired at lap 23, so halfway in. But they sent him back out. I'm like, oh, more power to you.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of the inevitable happened. If you're not a Red Bull and Max fan, you were kind of hoping people would trip over each other in the first corner, but Max was very, very, in fact, he said it on the interview afterwards, I just stayed out of the way at corner one. I don't want to be in there at all. So once he'd done that, it was just a matter of time as to how long it was going to take for him to work his way up through the field. It took him a little bit longer to get Lewis than I was thinking, actually. He didn't kind of laser in on him immediately. What was it, 5-6 laps by the time that he got Lewis?
It was 6 laps when he finally took Lewis.
So it wasn't
third
as
place. Yep.
Yeah. So and Lando just seemed to be going backwards.
Like
that car on mediums. I mean, we'll come back to Lando, actually. Hold that thought. We'll come back to Lando was what I think was happening around the tyre strategy, but
well, forgetting tires for a second, when this happened, right? So in this early part of the race, when Lando's going or struggling, two things came into my mind. One was this comment from the week prior.
You're not racing for anything.
Yeah, you're not racing for anything today, buddy, but turns out he did a pretty good job. So I was wrong when I thought that. And then two, I thought about my fantasy team. I'm like, did I triple McLaren this week?
Yeah, I did.
Oh God! What a big
I
mistake.
did.
I'm
I
watching
had
this. I'm thinking, just light it on fire. I'm starting next week. I'm starting Sargent. I'm gonna put Williams in. I'm like, give me Alpha Tauri. Just give me the sweet relief of death for my fantasy team. Watching that, God, that was. But anyway, he turned it around.
Well, he did. So if we kind of say that once the beginning had kind of settled down, then I was worried that when we kind of get into kind of the guts of the race, say, I don't know, like 7, 8 through to maybe like 40 or what have you, I was worried here we might get a bit of a lull. It's a long track. They tend to get spread out more. And I just kind of worried that, what are we going to have left to go here? But, and you kind of implied it during the Hey Now at the beginning that you didn't enjoy it. I'm not sure, but I've got to say that it felt on every single lap like the cameras were able to pick up a battle somewhere.
Agreed.
Now, I'm not saying it was for first and second. It could have even been sometimes it was the Haas boys fighting with Danny Rick down in 16th, 17th. But there was always somebody up somebody else's trumpet. And how many overtakes did we see today? I'm not going to DRS rant it because we did see a few of those.
I'll take it for
you.
But
how many of those did we see around the outside of? I think it was Lecom, other places. I think you've pulled down a few of them here of just.
Yeah, we'll get to it in a second. I have a special award this week, which you don't even
fantastic!
know about.
Well, we won't ruin that for you, but I just loved the fact that we always had something we didn't have any
agree.
kind of laps where the commentator was just making up shepherd's pie recipes
Oh
and
God, please not again. I'd agree. So like, I thought it was an all right race. Like the threat of rain confused me. Because we all know, and Paul will talk a little bit about this, but Spa can generate its own climate and have its own rain situations, exacerbated from what comes through, or it just blows away. And it blew away, right? We had a little bit of drizzle. I was confused. McLaren pitted Lando right before the rain was supposed to arrive. Every team radio, 4 minutes to rain, 2 minutes to rain. Box, Lando. I'm like, wait 2 minutes. What if it's real rain?
So here's my take on this, and I could be
I had the bad
massively
word
wrong,
in front
right?
of McLaren when I saw this happen.
Well, I did, and then I suddenly turned to I was at the bar, and I turned to Jim, and I said, "This could be genius," because I think he was on a one-stop strategy. He'd done mediums, he'd gone to hards. I think he was going to make those hards last to the end. If they think rain is coming, which now nukes any type of one-stopper, what's the point on staying on the concrete blocks for as long as possible? So he comes in and he puts softs on, and he was a rocket ship for those 4 or 5 laps on the brand new softs, and he starts catching people, are going past people again. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. They're thinking now that everybody might end up stopping for Inter, so everybody's got to do another pit stop. Why trundle around on hards and lose even more time? We're not going to gain anything. Now, You're right. Could they have held on a little bit longer to see if the rain was coming?
If you need Inters, you just ruined your race.
But it was classic. No, again, it was classic Spa rain that was coming.
It was a gamble.
That.
It worked,
I think the radar wasn't showing that it was going to be this huge track wetting rain.
Calm down, I'm with you.
No, I know, but I'm thinking because I was angry at the time. I was like, "What the hell are you doing? Wait, put Inters on." But actually, I think it was genius. And when we see where Lando ends up at the end of the race, I think that
I'm gonna spoil it.
Seventh.
I agree with you 100%. And again, this is why we are paid the little bucks to not be an F1 strategist, because I was also sitting there and I wrote a bunch of bad words, McLaren. You're ruining Lando's race 2 minutes before the rain starts. Turned out to be a nothing burger, and they did a great job and got him up to 7th in what looked like a tractor. Now, there was stuff happening at this point. A couple things I want to highlight. First off, Max. It took him... so he goes into second at lap 9. He's 3 seconds behind Checo. By lap 13, it was only 2.4 seconds, and I'm thinking, okay, Checo's holding his own. He really was holding back. It wasn't going that fast. Then Checo pits, and Max gets back onto the high horse of I am the greatest, and I will do whatever I want. I'm sorry, Max fans, but his whining about the boxing of Checo, why is he pitting, not me? Because he's in front. That's the way it's supposed to work. I don't care that you're a 2-time champion, about to be a 3-time champion, arguably the best driver on the grid today. Not even arguably. Inarguably the greatest driver on the grid today. And he's whining about it nonstop. GP deserves a bonus from this weekend. So then, of course, they give Checo a slow stop, 0.7 seconds extra on top, because that's the way Checo's life works. And then 2 laps later, Max is on top of Checo after Max pits. He decided to use his talent, a rocket ship of a car, and roast his tires and say, you know what, Checo? Goodbye. And passed him. It was lap 17 for those who were gambling at home, because I know an awful lot of us were gambling on what lap would Max take over first place. I'd gone in on lap 6, so I was very aggressive.
I went for 3.
We needed 1 lap of DRS. So anyways, lap 17, and then by lap 19, he's 2 seconds ahead of Checo. And he beat him by 22 seconds. I'm sorry, Checo. I know you finished second, and I know that's the best anyone can ask you. And you acquitted yourself well for a while. It fell apart in the second half, in my opinion. I don't know why. Tires, lighter car, mental mistakes, or just talent. But whatever it was, once again, I got a big problem with Checo finishing that far back. I know he's second.
That far behind. And then also the mentality when he got interviewed afterwards when they were doing the race. He's like, yeah, we had a good start. We got away, blah, blah, blah.
And then
Max comes through, and he's just so fast that he was going...
It's the same car.
The same car.
I know. Anyway, so that was good.
But by the way,
yeah, good.
I was just gonna say just one thing. Like Jim pointed out, he was like, if you want in like one little snapshot the reaction speed and skill of these drivers, it was Max.
Oh my God,
Eau Rouge Radillon, as he caught the greasy track.
Oh.
That for most drivers, not most drivers, but you or I, we're spinning like till the cows come home.
I don't even make it
like,
that far.
True, but what I mean is like that thing looked like it was nothing, but when they watched the onboard. That car was off round in circles if he didn't react in the split second that he reacted in. I mean, that was quite actually a hold.
Agreed.
But-
So there were a lot of other things going on, as you said, and this was fun. It kept it fun. So George was moving up. He was battling Gasman. We had Yuki and Lance battling, Ocon and Alex. And then something I just want to highlight for a second, something that to me was a microcosm of why pit stops are so important. People may say, 2.1 versus 2.6, who really cares? Who really cares? Pierre came in and pitted with Alex coming in behind him. Pierre pitted and had a slow pit stop. I think it was his front left. I don't remember, but it was like 6 or 7 tenths of a second longer than it should be. He goes trundling down pit lane at 80 kilometers an hour with the pit lane limiter on, and Alex comes out of the Williams garage last, of course, because they're last in last year's championship, and has maybe a third of his car in front of him and doesn't hold for Pierre. Some people might say it was an unsafe release. Alex doesn't slow down. Pierre has to back out of leaving the pit lane, and Pierre Gasly sat for 20 laps, maybe 17, behind Albon. Could not pass him. And the two of them were glued together because of that 0.5 or 6 seconds. 0.6, less than 1 second to pit stop, ruined Pierre's race and left him stuck behind Alex for 20 some odd laps. So if you ever want to know why pit stops are super important and the strategies teams use, just watch Pierre's Spa from this year, because that was a mess. If they didn't nail his pit stop, he's in front of Alex and he's tackling other people in front of him if he can. So anyway, I watched that and I was just kind of sick to my stomach for Alpine and Pierre, who'd had a great sprint the day before, ending up doing well, but now not.
Yep. And then we kind of came into the closing stages. I was a little, this is the part where maybe, if I'm grading the race, this is where my expectations weren't met. I was fully believing that one of either Charles, Lewis, or George were keeping their tyres in good condition to go for one last sort of 4 or 5 lap hammer down on the chase. So either Lewis chasing down Charles going after Perez, because they were all within decent windows of catchability if they could throw some proper, almost quality type laps in. But it just didn't happen. It was like, and I don't know if it's because they didn't know how long tyres would last on this circuit, fuel. Again, they got no data from no running on dry all weekend, but no one really did anything. The only thing that really anybody did was Lewis decided to take the fastest lap point off Max. I was surprised to see the mediums go on. Maybe they were the only ones he had brand new sets of. I don't know.
I was thinking the same thing. He must have had used slicks and new mediums.
Yeah,
I was also
so he
surprised.
threw them on and he got it. He got the fastest lap. So kudos for that. But come on, it's time for your
fake
time
award.
for your award.
So this is called the Onions Award. Onions! And so that's Billy Raftery for college basketball fans here in the States. And so the Onions Award has to go, and it's a split between Alex and Esteban. So it was, I think, lap 38 or so. There was about 6 or 7 laps left. Ocon goes around Yuki on the outside of Les Combes. And I'm watching this. I'm like, you have to be kidding me, Esteban. I mean, he broke so late. And I'm like, I thought he was going to go straight off. He held it.
I thought he was off on the escape road. Yeah,
me too. And he held it on the track. Not even on the track. Totally on the track. And I mean, like, wow, that is bold. But then Alex at Blanchimont, just before the bus stop chicane, twice took people 2 laps in a row. The first one on the outside of Blanchimont, and then breaks, and then he's got the wrong angle going into the chicane, but still made it happen. And the second time, I can't remember, it was on a Haas, I feel like. He's zigzagging behind him, almost hits him, has to brake, still outbrakes him.
Into the bus stop, wasn't it?
I know. Wild. So I would say the Onions Award for today, because people... You're right. There were a lot of overtakes. There was a lot of action. I felt like it was a little bit too much DRS fueled. The Kemmel Straight DRS was a little too long. It was like someone got a slingshot, pew, and then went past him most of the time. But there was a lot of other action. Not as much as I would have liked in terms of position battles. It was like, flip 11th and 12th, or flip 5th and 6th, and then it kind of solidified. But boy, those overtakes at the end were the highlight for me. It wasn't quite the Spa I'm looking for, but I enjoyed those.
I think you've got to give Alex the Onions Award. I don't
2
like shared
times.
awards. A, it was 2 times. B, that second one where he gambled on going left, but then the Haas moved left and brake. He was collecting. I mean, talk about reaction time, about Max going up in the rain.
I know.
That was reaction time as well, because not only did he save just smashing it into the back of the car in front, he reacted in a quick enough time to change his angle of attack and make the overtake stick.
Wild.
It was... Yeah, I think he has to take the onions.
So Billy Raftery is giving him the Onions Award. Sorry.
So that was it. We had Max, Checo, Charles on the podium. We called it, obviously not a big call that we made last week to say a Red Bull 1-2, and we said Max from Checo. I agree with you that the distance was too large. I'd said Lando in third, I think. I can't remember who you said.
Yeah, Lando.
You said Lando as well.
I
so
didn't
we were a little bit
anticipate
wrong
the
on
setup
that.
on the car, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think seventh was a good fight back from him in the
Great
end.
job.
I would love to have seen what Oscar could have done, but was really happy to see Charles up there. He was in witness protection today. I don't think we saw.
Nope.
We didn't see ever. I'm not even sure we saw him pit.
Maybe.
In fact, I think at the podium there were only two people on the podium. There wasn't anybody stood on the third step. That's how much he wasn't on TV this week.
The people on the podium were Max, Checo, Max's tire engineer who didn't know where to stand nor to stand on the podium, and Charles, who was Mr. Invisible. I mean, I didn't. Again, that's a little bit why I thought the race disappointed me a little. I'm not complaining. It was fine. I'll take it. I'll take it. But like, we had, if you go back to the results, Max 22 seconds ahead of Checo. Checo gets my, and I can't believe I'm saying this, he gets my pits award. He was my
I was just about to move on to that. I was going to say,
how can second place be the pits? He was 4 places higher on the grid in the same car, had the preferential box strategy, and still finished 22 seconds behind.
Well,
in
and
a
worse than that,
44-lap race.
I can't believe that we're agreeing probably for the second week running on this, but I was going to go here as well. And I thought I was going to annoy you because I know you're a Checo fan, but I'm thinking
I am a Checo fan.
Max didn't catch him until, what do we say, 16?
13 or 16. 16, yeah.
Whatever it was. It doesn't, 1 or 2 laps difference. It doesn't really matter. That means that's how long Checo had in the best car on the grid to build the lead while Max is trying to fight from 6th on the grid. So not only did Max have to overcome
17.
fighting...
Lap 17.
17 out of 44. So 17 out of 44 is how long Checo had to make a gap.
It's a second lap.
And then get caught, and then lost from that point on. 20... It's insane.
It's about a second a lap. A second. A second. Do you realize what I'm saying here? Qualities are determined by 0.011. We're just going 1.0. Damn.
Thanks for clarifying the second.
Yeah, sorry. So we agree. I can't believe the second place on the podium is the pits with Checo, but I'm sorry. And his dad was there cheering, go, Checo's dad.
So who's your king of the pits then?
Lando. I'm sorry, Lando. I thought I was so confused by this McLaren setup the whole weekend. And the car was so bad with full fuel and in the way it was set up. And the pit stop strategy worked. I don't know how we got into 7th. I know the car's better than it's been. But I look at it, and I'd love to say Charles, but, I mean, he was 17 seconds ahead of Lewis, who was so... Lewis knew he wasn't catching him. He went from the medium fastest lap. Fernando was stuck in 5th. George was stuck in 6th.
Do you want to my king of the pits?
Lance, I go with Lando. Who do you got? If you say Lando, I'm turning off the podcast.
No. Okay. My king of the pits is Yuki. Because
yes.
I thought, under tremendous
that
pressure from Danny Rick rocking up in his first race and beating him last time out, this time... Yuki was miles ahead of Danny Rick, miles ahead in pace. And he went and nailed it. Actually, he lost out to Stroll and Ocon, I think, in a little bit of the... he was actually rocking up in about 8th, I think, in some of the final laps. But then they took him. But he hung on in there for, I think, 10th for the final point, right?
Correct. And
yes,
not only that, I think I'll hit this a little bit in the stats, but I'm going to do it now because it's relevant. I'm pretty sure I'm right. That's his third 10th place finish, which means he has all of AlphaTauri's 3 points. And it's all because of Yuki. So I agree.
So King
Yuki's
Yuki
a good
for me.
Choice. Yeah, I go Lando, you go Yuki for King of the Pits.
So we have different King of the Pits, but we both agree on the same, the Pits.
I'm sorry. I can't believe we're blaming the second place guy for being
I know, it's
the Pits.
I honestly thought we were going to argue about this. I'm like, how the hell can you say that the guy that finished second? But just because of the machinery that he's got at his disposal, I was a bit underwhelmed. I got myself built up into a point where I thought we were going to have a real humdinger of a fight for the win. Because I thought Checo's now he's got to bounce back, show that he can take it to Max. He's got a head start of 5 places on the grid. Come on, Checo time. And it just meh.
I mean,
but anyway.
So we've said it. I'll say it one last time. 27 laps, right? From 17 to 44. 27 laps. He lost by 22 seconds. And Max was on the radio complaining the whole time. It's a little less than a second. Max is on the radio. I mean, by the way, so one last thing on this before we get to the stats. I'd been warming to Max. I'm not anti-Max. I just am ambivalent. He's great. He's incredibly talented. He's a generational talent. Max fans, relax. I got your back. I get it. But he was such a petulant child on the radio the whole weekend, and it was worse in the race. I know he really let GP have it in the sprint, and the two of them had it out over the sprint weekend, whatever. That felt like water under the bridge when he apologized. I'm like, great. The way he complained about the pit stops, about Checo pitting first from when he was in the lead, and then when GP's telling him to maintain his tires and he's taking too much out of it, he goes, maybe I'll just build up a bigger lap and come in and pit on my own, and you guys will have to practice pit stop strategy. What?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here, man?
I guess he's got to do something to keep himself entertained.
The wind. I had to hold on to the wheel, which I was going to make fun of him for, but then Charles agreed with him in the cooldown room, so I'll hold my points. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the stats, and this was a pretty good one, and I love Spa, so we'll use the mariachi. SAP Stats Belgian GP edition. So excited. Last race before the break. So it was Verstappen's, as we've heard a lot of these we heard on TV, but it was Verstappen's 8th consecutive championship race win. Ties him with, I believe, Seb and Ascari, if I'm remembering what they said right. But he's one short of the all-time record held by Seb in 2013. So prior to today, and we tweeted this out on Twitter, which is where you do tweets.
Did we, or did we exit out on it?
We exited out. And Verstappen had never won from 6th on the grid before, so it means he ties Fernando's record of winning from 9 grid positions. I thought that was a great stat whenever that came out, whomever found that on Friday, and we sent that out. A couple of Sean Kelly's. It was Verstappen's 13th consecutive podium finish, which is the 4th longest streak in history, and he will arrive at home. And Crofty highlighted this, but didn't highlight it this way. Max will arrive at his home race at the end of the break at Zandvoort, having not lost a Grand Prix or sprint event in almost 4 months since Azerbaijan, April 30th. So you want to talk about diversity at the top, or don't? Finished 1-2 for the 12th win of the year. Red Bull broke the record for most victories from the beginning of the season. We heard this on TV. McLaren had 11 races to start the year in 88. P2 was Checo's best finish since Miami, which was 7 races ago. And we know he had all those challenges with not even making it into Q3 during that time. It was as though his 33rd podium for his career, surpassing Danny Rick's career podium total. So Checo's moving up a lot of boards. You got to give him a little credit, even though he's our pits this week. Oh, your boy Ferrari Charles, my boy. P3, it's his 3rd podium of the year. I'm happy he's there. I joked last week we'd only see the Ferrari champagne for the rest of the year up there. I'm happy he did that. I don't know where the Ferrari pace came from, but it was just behind Red Bull and just in front of everybody else, and we didn't see him the whole time. However, to be the Debbie Downer, he has now failed, Charles. He's now failed to win in his last 9 starts from first on the grid. So, again, he's Mr. Saturday, right? He can drag a car. Is that what you think? He drag a car around that's not as good race pace and make it happen in quali? I don't know. A couple more here. Sean Kelly said, this is a good one. Mercedes George Russell finished 6th for the 2nd consecutive weekend, having never finished 6th before in his entire F1 career. That is a stat for nerds. And after taking 8th for Alpine, Esteban has now scored points at Spa in his last 6 consecutive appearances. Wow. With P9 for Aston Martin, Lance Stroll, also known as Rob's 3rd favorite driver, or 3rd best driver, tied his best ever Belgian Grand Prix finish, but Stroll has not had a top 8 finish in the last 5 races. So, the Aston Martin has fallen off, as we know. And then we already talked about this. Yuki finished 10th. He scored all of AlphaTauri's points in 2023, and it was his 3rd 10th of the year. The other ones being Australia, which we remember because he was trying not to be 11th. He had all those 11th in a row, and Baku. So, Rob, anything else you'd like to highlight from the Belgian GP?
No, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good way to sign off for the first half as we go towards the break now. I'm not going to lie. I would like to see someone else win it, but I'm also kind of ready to see history be made and see how many Max can win. I will, just before we listen to here, Pit Lane Paul, one little tweet I just sent out right before at the end of the race was, I kind of realized that there's kind of 3 schools of F1 fans out there, and you can see it. You can see it in every single tweet. And this isn't going to be rocket science or any kind of thing you haven't thought of before, but there are fans that only enjoy races for the win. Like, as in the battle at the front for the podium. There are fans that don't care as long as there's action. So both sets of those fans could all agree that Hungary sucked. And then there are the Red Bull fans. So right now, if you only enjoy racing for who's going to be on the podium, you're turning off. It's a snooze fest. You're writing off this season. You think it's the worst season that you've ever enjoyed in your life. I'm in the second bucket, which is I just want action. So I enjoy today. I love today, even though I would like to see race wins being up for grabs. I enjoy today, whereas I hated Hungary because it was boring. And if you're a Red Bull fan, I just, I don't see there's anything wrong. You just got to enjoy it. Everyone gets a period of dominance, and if you're lucky enough to support a team when they're dominating, then happy. But I can't wait for the second half of the season. People that do only want to know about the race wins, then see you next season, guys.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue because Paul talks about it. I'm going to jump right in to Paul's review.
Hey now. Okay, heading into the summer break. There's actually 3 laps of this race still to go, so I'm going to chance this one pretty early. I mean, one thing's certain, and that Max wins. I can't say it's getting boring. I always say fair play, they have the best car, but to be then destroying your teammate by what's probably going to be over 20 seconds. And knowing Max, he'll probably come in for a pit stop at the end. He doesn't need to. He's got the fastest lap, but yep. Good weekend, really. The weather's just been howling all weekend. The rain has been ridiculous. There was threats of the rain during the race. We didn't think there'd be much, but it was enough to cause a little bit of panic. The thing with Spa, it's like a microclimate, so rain can develop very quickly out of nothing. That's pretty much how it was during the race. Fridays were back to being good with the sprint format, so we had the qualifying. No huge shocks. I know Max had a 5-place penalty, but that doesn't really. When someone's in tune with the car, the 5-place penalty, this is almost the perfect track to take it because there's so much more we could do here. So no real big shocks. Piastri went well. You've got to be honest. He is becoming a bit of a star, isn't he? Let's face it. Excuse me. Apart from that, we then went to Saturday for the sprint shootout. Saturday was a really wet day. Fair bit going on. Again, great to see Piastri where he was. Daniel Ricciardo, I know I said on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, will he be as good as De Vries, so on and so forth. My argument still is, well, maybe, but I look at the race at the moment. He's P17, Yuki's in P10. Would De Vries have done any better? It's probably not fair to say yes or no at that one. But again, a good sprint race, a lot of overtakes as you'd expect here. The DRS power down at Rouge in up the top of that hill is pretty significant. So. It made it a little bit exciting, made it a little bit fun, made it, worth watching. I'm a big fan of the sprint weekends. Again, no huge shocks, I guess, on that. It's good to see, again, Oscar get up there, and that was sort of then ruined on the Sunday when he had his opening lap issue. Going back to the sprint, Lewis and Perez, it was quite a talking point. I have to, I thought it was harsh when I first saw it, but I was chatting to Ant Davison before he did his segment, and we both sort of agreed. Lewis does slide wide into Perez, not really the other way around. So you have to have that one, I guess.
Name dropping.
Yeah, and then going back, as I just said, Oscar is such a shame on the Sunday morning. To be absolutely honest with you, as I speak, Lewis is just boxing for some mediums. He's got a pit stop in hand. So that's fair enough. But the race is going to finish sort of where I expected. Max wins. 20 seconds ahead of Perez. I mean, it's crazy, that is, when you consider Perez was, it's just crazy. He's just... I don't know if that's bad on Perez or just how good Max actually is, but Charles third, good to see Ferrari getting back on the podium. Lewis, pretty much with that stop, has resigned himself to fourth. I can't imagine he'd go for a fastest lap. And that's sort of where it's going to finish. It's summer break time for us now. We get a bit of chance to relax and go and enjoy ourselves. And like I said, I'm heading to Denver. But on the whole, yeah, a good first half of this season, even though it's over a half. Red Bull continue to win. That's getting boring. But the racing behind them is quite exciting. So a lot to look forward to. As you get a changling of glasses, we just want to pack up and go home. Thanks very much. And I'll catch you guys in about a month's time after Holland, where you'd be an idiot not to put money on Max to win. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. So anyway, something we've been doing, in addition to having Pit Lane Paul, is in the marbles. And we'd forgotten to kind of publicize it the last 2 races. We're going to bring it back after the break and remind people, if you have watched the race and have a handful of things you want to tell us about, in a relatively brief amount of time, send it to us. And you can send it to our Gmail, dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com. Just a quick audio file on your phone. Takes 30 seconds. Send it our way. And we have one this week. Rob, do you want to set this up since you collected it, roving reporter on the street?
I think I do set it up. If you press play, then I will set it up myself. Okay, we're doing our In the Marbles section live down the Iron Horse. I've got Jeff with me, who's part of the Canada crew. So quick Spa thoughts, Jeff.
So I thought Spa was a lot more interesting than last week's race. McLaren definitely forgot to pray to their voodoo gods. Didn't work out so well, but good race altogether.
Yeah, I'd agree. Cheers, Jeff.
Thanks.
Awesome. So you too can be on the pod. Yeah, send it to us. dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com. Jeff, thank you, man. That was awesome. Fantasy. All right, so it's still calculating, but this is important. Important, I say. The winner of the first half will get a T-shirt. And so the first half is done, and once it's done calculating, and we will bring this up on the pod next week, we will be sending a T-shirt to the winner of the first half of the Dirty Side. But we also didn't get a chance, because we were doing this quick last week, to talk about Hungary. So let me do that now. Hungary was a challenge for me personally. We'll get into why in a second. But in the top 10 of the Dirty Side League, we had Crash Team Racing 1 with 335 points. Well done. Followed by Tifosi Pikachu 1, Afoninje 1, Relampago Marquinhos, Potenza Racing, Much Mistaken, Tails I Win, I think that's Andy, Just a Racing Incident, I like that a lot, all for 4th. So a lot of ties at 315, followed very closely by Tsunoda, #Perez, #Max at 313, tied with FPL Instinctive, both tied at 9. So amazing job. I choked. I had a horrendous week. I finished 55th in the league with 245 points. I'd like to tell you there was a reason why. My team is really the reason why. I had Max, Fernando, this is last week's, Max, Fernando, Carlos, Red Bull, and McLaren, so all that worked, but I also had Pierre, who, if you remember, it was the second week in a row with the double Alpine not finished. That was a massive negative. And I had Joe, who ended up with a -4. So last week did not help me, but we want to highlight this because we love the fantasy. Going into the last race, so just before today, the top of the Dirty Side League, Much Mistaken at first, Vincendus 1 and 2nd, FPL Instinctive in 3rd, Crash Team Racing 1 and 4th, Michael Cronje 16 and 5th, Lord William, we trade a lot of tweets, or William II on 6th, McLapham, I love that, Red Bull Catering Funds, so good, and at F1 Fantasy Hub, Rob, who's been on a couple times, 9th, and Blacks for Strap-On in 10th. I love that as well. I think that's Renato. So that was a great job by everybody going through Hungary. Bad job by me. That 55th, this is embarrassing, but I own up to my failures very publicly and loudly. Last year, I finished 333rd in the world out of 1.6 million. Going into this week, I was 61,000th in the world, which is
some way to
bad.
go there, I think, Brian. But
I don't know what chips to use to move up, but that sets up this week, which is calculating. But anyhow,
yeah, and then we'll read that out next week. Before we talk about next week, this week, in fact, only yesterday, we had the pleasure of recording a 100 Seconds of DRS with bizarrely another friend of Brian's. I didn't think we'd have any left now, but apparently still paying people to come on and pretend they're his friend. We met up with Adam. Well, I won't spoil why I was drawn to Adam immediately because we're going to say it as part of the interview. So let's have a listen into how we got on catching up with Adam.
Box.
All right, we are incredibly lucky this week to have an amazing 100 Seconds of DRS guest. He's a great guy and a good friend of mine, and he's never been on the pod. So I am very excited to have him on, even though he's a big F1 fan. And I often pay him for rides home after nights of drinking with F1 trading cards. That's a true story. Adam, welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to it. And you're welcome for the rides home. You didn't even have to pay me with the cards. I would have done it.
I know you're a good. Like I said, you're a good.
My son
dude.
Thanks you, and there was a Valtteri right at the top of the pack, so it was a good one.
I still have more because I bought them at the end of last year, and 2022 is in the rear view. But man, thanks for doing this, and thanks for being on. And it's interesting, right? Because as we've been friends for a couple years now, I didn't even know you were into F1 at first, and we kind of chatted about it at bowling a couple times. But I'm curious, like, how did you end up getting into Formula One?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about how you're excited that fans come in through Drive to Survive. I mean, I'm the poster child for that. And it was after the pandemic. My daughter plays travel softball, and there's a guy, I'll actually introduce you to him, Brian. He lives a couple blocks away from you, but he's another dad on the team. He went to Monaco last year.
Oh,
and
wow.
That's, as a non-F1 fan, that's the one race that everybody knows. And I frankly was like, well, it's kind of boring. Like, it's the great glitz and the glamour, but, there's not a lot of passes and all that. But he's like, just trust me. So we were out of town at the tournament, and we were doing some pre-flights, I'll say, in his room before we headed out to the fields all day. And it was Austria last year, and it was that was one of the sprints, right? So he's like, look, it's 25 laps. Sit down, I'll tell you all about this. So we talked about the 10 teams, the 2 drivers, competition, the pit wall, some of the personalities with, Gunther and the others. And he told me about Drive to Survive. I came back, I binged about 4 seasons in 4 days, and the rest is history. So there we go.
Oh, awesome. And I want to ask a follow-up question about Formula One, but I'm really going to have to address something first, which is that for those of you just listening to the pod rather than seeing it on YouTube, you won't know that he sat there adorned in a beautiful Arsenal shirt. So I'm getting really close to suggesting that we just ditch this. We go for Dirty Side of the Pitch, America's #1 Arsenal podcast, and me and you go and set that up maybe instead.
I'm in for that, 100%. I could talk intelligently about that all day long. So,
sorry, Brian. So
That's
anyway,
okay.
we'll get back
Go
on
for
topic. We've got enough monthly allowance on Buzzsprout for me to maybe set up a second podcast. So anyway, so you've binged Drive to Survive. You've kind of dipped your toe into it. When was it? This season is the first season. Then you've sat down and sort of gone through, I guess, the life cycle of a season. Like, did you watch any testing, or did you wait and jump into the straight race? How did kind of this year work out for you?
No, I kind of jumped right in the second half after the silly season last year,
cool.
and kind of picked it up as I went along. I wasn't quite done with all the seasons yet, so I was trying to not have spoilers. But it's neat that you see, it's like Ricardo's driving for Renault back in the day, and you're like, well, now he's over here at McLaren, and things are moving around. So my son and I are trying to connect the dots as far as who went where. But no, it was just an educational kind of building the plane as you fly it almost, right? Just soaking up as much as we can. I started listening to the pod, subscribing to some social feeds, and just drinking from the fire hose. Yeah, good times.
I basically wear a Dirty Side t-shirt at almost every bowling event. So I twist their arms. Like, you guys aren't listening? Can you at least click on the pod? Thanks. And Adam's been great. So Adam, now that you're kind of enjoying, I guess, as you and I have talked about it, each weekend and the races, do you have a favorite team or driver? Is there one particular personality that sticks out to you that you root for every week?
It's drivers more than teams, just because I don't know enough of the backstory yet to get fully emotionally invested. Obviously I can see the pain of being a Ferrari fan. I get it. Hey, I'm a Cub fan. I'm an Illinois fan, right? I get it. But no, I think in that first sprint in Austria, I gravitated towards Aston Martin because that's always been my car growing up. Well, I wish it was my car. That's the car I always wanted to have. But then when I got to know the drivers, I am not a Lance Stroll fan. I just can't stand the guy. So Aston Martin, right out. So no, I'm more drivers. I've been a Carlos Sainz fan just from the day one.
Yes.
I love Alex Albon. I like Lando. I love watching the rookies come in. Terrible to see what happened to Nick a couple weeks ago. So I don't dislike anyone. I'm not a Red Bull guy just because It's like rooting for the Cowboys or something, right?
Right.
The New England
Cheering for the
Patriots.
Yankees
Like,
or
you
the
just,
Patriots. Exactly.
exactly. You just can't do it. But I like Checo. I wish he could do more in that car. So right now it's more just getting my feet under me, understanding some of the storylines, and even as we go through with the full season, watching some of those develop. I'm getting a better feel, but I wouldn't commit for a team just yet.
Well,
I always think that with the kind of the domination thing, if and this is so shallow, it really is. But if you feel like you've earned your stripes, like you've supported a team for a while, and then they have a period of domination, you kind of feel like you earned it. It was, "Oh, I was there during the bad times, right?" So felt that as a Ferrari fan when Schumacher came along and they had that like 5-year period, it was like it's my time to be entertained and just watch Ferrari win every single race. So I know we say that we don't gatekeep, but I don't mind Red Bull fans that were there from the start when they weren't very good, and
Yeah.
now they're enjoying their time in the sunshine. I do get a little bit like I don't like glory fans in any sport I've kind of followed. I grew up with a lot of Liverpool fans because they were dominating, so everyone just decided to go and support the team that are winning, and then when they stop winning, they go support someone else. So I'm not a glory fan supporter, so I can understand why you don't like the Red Bull at the moment. Now, if you're new to the sport, I do like the fact that you like the drivers, because what I want to ask you on is me and Brian. Well, maybe I'm putting words in his mouth. Maybe I definitely am right now, fanboying over Oscar Piastri. I have not had an individual driver kind of light some kind of excitement while I'm watching sessions for probably quite a long time, actually. But this kid, oh my gosh, I just can't wait to watch what he does next time behind the wheel. And we're recording this after the sprint event and before the main event tomorrow, so we don't know what will happen in the race. But you got your eye on Oscar at the moment?
I do. I just actually watched quali about 10 minutes before this. I mowed the yard, figured it might be on camera, so I got to make it look nice. But McLaren started the year pretty tough. I mean, like I said, I've been a Lando fan for the last year, and when Oscar came in, just understanding some of the pedigree he has coming up through the ranks, and when they got the upgrades at, was it Silverstone that they just suddenly shot right up to the top? You kind of expect Lando to put the car there, but when you see Oscar right there behind him and not even building a gap to the Mercs behind him and holding, right? I mean, he did a fantastic job. And I like the fact, I guess, what kind of endears him to me is he's your good kind of number 2 guy, right? I mean, he's still kind of the rookie and the low man on the totem pole. So when he's asked to switch positions and when he got kind of screwed on the undercut in the last race, he didn't complain about it. Well, maybe he did. He didn't do it on camera or out to anything in public, but you gotta pull for a guy that's a team player in his first year. But I mean, the guy's got talent. He's got crazy good talent.
He seems to be just a genuinely really nice guy as well, because obviously you've listened to the pods, Pit Lane Paul, and when we were fortunate enough to hang out in the paddock of Canada with him and we saw Oscar go past, Paul turned to us and just says, "I have great banter with him. He's such a nice kid." And it feels natural. It doesn't feel like something put on for the cameras. And then once he's in like his own, truck, he's like cursing about Lando. You just feel he's a naturally good kid with lots of great talent.
Well, he kind of
genuinely good guy.
He kind of looked at Paul and said, waved or said, nodded, and then moved on. Not everyone did that because they were busy.
It's because they were They were busting each other's chops over the cricket because it was Australia against England. But even that, the fact that they're literally about to. Yeah, they're just about to go to the driver's brief, and he's about to go and drive in the Canadian Grand Prix, but he's got time to come and shoot the breeze about cricket with Paul. It just seems genuinely nice lad.
It's good stuff.
Anyway, I'll stop fanboying over Oscar now.
In Canada. I didn't even realize you guys were in Canada right now. We've heard, and trust me, we've heard from Brian. No, from Brian for weeks leading up to that. That's all we talked about. So glad it went well.
True.
I'm insanely jealous of you guys going up there.
Pretty much true. I actually am hoping tomorrow to finish the page on the website, dirtysideofthetrack.com, about the Canada pictures and videos. So I'm hoping to get that out tomorrow night if I can find the time. Yeah, nice. It's only taken me 5 weeks.
I didn't even know that. That's breaking news to me as well.
Yeah, well, I figured it was a good time to get a little plug in there. Now that we're actually on real radio and internet radio in addition to the pod, so that if anyone's driving around listening,
are we actually? Do you know we're on now?
87% sure. And so, so anyway, Adam, you are, and I would compare you to Oscar, a genuinely good guy, somebody I enjoy spending a lot of time with. The question I have for you before we get to the 100 seconds, last question. What do you see happen in the second half of the year, right? When this comes out tomorrow, we'll be ready for summer break. We'll have 10 races left. What do you anticipate? Any teams or drivers you're watching? Anything you're looking for? Or more importantly, do you think Max will win every race the rest of the way?
I think that's a given. I mean, even with his grid penalties tomorrow, it's going to make for an exciting first, I'm going to say 8 laps. It's a long track, right? But I think in the second half, I think Checo's on the hot seat, no doubt about it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all that. I think I'd like to see if Alonso kind of implodes now that, Aston started the season really well and now they're not so well.
Yeah.
Who just said? I think they said that we are the number 5 team right now.
Yeah, Mike Crack, the team principal, came out yesterday or 2 days ago, said we are the 5th team.
Yeah. I'd love to see, I would love to see the Williams get on a podium. I think Albon can do it. If the race conditions are right, if there's safety cars, if there's some DNFs, I think we could get up there. I think that car's driving lights out right now and just not a great car. So yeah, I think there's a lot, but I think the main storyline for me is Checo on the hot seat and just seeing because that's going to be a domino thing, right? There's just going to be a lot of stuff that happens
right
with that seat.
Once we have a race that's not 8 a.m., we got to get together and watch it together. But the 8 a.m.s are reserved for me, laying sideways on the couch trying to figure out what happened the night before. So
I'll let you keep that. I won't bother you there.
Yeah. Do you know what? There are some sites that, I will never talk about from Canada that I will take to the grave, man.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right. The 100 Seconds of DRS is obviously why you joined us here today. It is, America's leading Formula One quiz show, getting to know listeners of the dirty side. People talk about it from bus stops to subway stations all around the globe. Are you ready, Adam?
Let me get a sip of my brain tonic here.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'll get a sip of my swing juice before.
There you go. I'm surprised any was left after Wednesday night. I thought I killed all those.
You did. I actually just went to Jewel and bought. I went to the Jewels and bought out the rest.
All good. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Rob, are you timing?
Am I timing?
Yes.
Rob asked questions faster than you. Yeah, Rob's the best.
Yeah, I asked. You asked yesterday in the. Well, we don't want to break the news of who our guest is for next week, but you asked yesterday.
All right.
Well, do you want to ask because he's your buddy? Do you want to ask because he's your buddy?
No, you ask him. You do it, because if it's better than if I did it, I'd just serve him slow softballs because we play together. All right, I have the time. I'm counting you in. Rob, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Adam, are you ready, sir?
You got it. Let's do it.
Begin in 3, 2, 1, go.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall?
Ferrari Testarossa and Carol Alt.
Could lead into this one. Ferrari or Ford?
Ford. I'm an American. Yeah, my first car was a Jeep.
Mario or Luigi? Best F1 driver on the grid currently?
It's got to be Max.
Best F1 driver of all time?
I don't have much of a history, but from what I've seen, I got Schumacher.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No. Especially if it has ketchup.
If you could add a James Bond style... If you got a James Bond style gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
I think you need the blades on the side of the tire. Get the elbows out.
Favorite musician or musical group?
Pearl Jam.
Nice. Favorite livery on the 2023 cars?
I really like that Williams from Silverstone.
Yes. Do you have any lucky superstitions?
We could sit here for... Nope, I honestly don't. No, I can't think of any.
That's fine. Wet or dry race?
I like the wets.
Would you rather be chased by 1 horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses?
5'6", the small ones to give me a chance. So 10 duck size.
If you could swap the cars out for another type of transportation, what would you pick?
Ooh, oh man, you got a brain freeze there. I heard someone else say it, and I know I'm not original. The double-decker buses. That would be amazing.
That's a good one. Mustache or mullets?
Oh, mullets for sure.
Time.
We
finish on the mullet. Look at that.
All right. I had a good mullet. I'll have to show you guys pictures.
Nice.
I think the correct answer to that one is both, but it's the mustache and the mullet. It's got to be, right.
There you go. These days, yeah, it is kind of part and parcel.
My family's disappointed I haven't gotten a haircut in a couple weeks, and it's starting to get kind of shaggy. I said, yeah, I'm growing out a mullet. And every time I say that, they all kind of recoil a little bit. So now I feel like I have to actually do it, but that's like a long-term investment. I don't know. I don't know if
I
I've
would
got time
love
on
to
me.
see the sap,
You could do
the
it.
sap mullet, and then you wear the Bottas vest that you've got with the mullet on the back. That
Yeah,
that is what we need to see.
the Bottas tank top that we have.
The what? Sorry.
I can't do
You
it.
said it wrong twice.
I know. The Valtteri,
Bottas.
he calls him a vest.
Bottas.
Yeah, exactly. The tank top that Rob and I bought, it is really ill-fitting for large Americans. Let me just say that. It looks like I'm on stage at a place I would never go looking for dollar bills. This thing was cut horrendously for men of my proportions. But I still have it. Never worn it. One day. And on that bombshell and terrible disappointment, Adam, man, thank you for doing this, brother. It is always great hanging out with you, and it's great that we get a chance to talk Formula One when we do hang out, and thanks for being on the 100 Seconds with Rob and I.
Thanks, guys. It was a good time. I got to admit, I was a little nervous going into it, but you guys did a great job here. Keep it up. Let's go for the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And Rob, the real season starts here in about 2 weeks. So
Yes, it does. Come on, you Gunners, and I'll be in touch
Come
regarding the Arsenal podcast.
there you go.
Nice to meet you,
I'm
Adam.
in. I'm in. Nice to meet you. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Adam.
Box.
Thanks so much, Adam, for joining us. That was fantastic. And similar to the call for In the Marbles, if anyone's interested in doing the 100 Seconds of DRS, obviously let us know at F1 Dirty Side on X. Look at me.
Yeah,
Or
look at that.
Send us an email, dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com. And as I mentioned in there, obviously check our website, www.dirtysideofthetrack.com, if you're interested in listening to this on any other platforms. So,
and if
Rob,
you do want to back our idea of dirtysideofthepitch.com for me and Adam to have a breakaway Arsenal podcast, then yeah, let us know.
you're not allowed to use my Zoom. Why don't you tell everybody what's coming next week as we start the break?
Yeah, so going into the break, obviously we're not going to have any races to cover, so we've been busy working away trying to line up some guests, see if we can convince anybody to come on our pokey little pod. And we've already recorded one for next week, so we've got it in the bag. Beginning of the year, before we hit the heights of Valtteri, we haven't got Valtteri coming back on again before I ruin anything.
Calm down for a second.
Everybody calm down. No, we had Spanners from the Missed Apex podcast, which was great to kind of catch up with him because it's a podcast I followed for a while. We can't claim that we're trying to aspire to be anything like them, but it was great to have Spanners on. Now, way back when, 10 years ago, their co-creator over at Missed Apex podcast is Matt Trumpets. So a bit like me and Brian, they've got a split between a Brit and American. So Spanners is the Brit and Matt is the American. So we caught up with him Friday, wasn't it, Brian? And sat down, had a nice chat with him. So that'll be what's on next week. So please tune in and give a listen to us talking to Matt Trumpets from Missed Apex.
It was a lot of fun. Matt, thanks again for doing that. You guys will enjoy it. And Rob, anything to close before we close the show here?
No, was I supposed to finish on a joke or something? I didn't.
Yes, you failed. Everyone, thanks so much for listening. I know this was a long one. It was so much this weekend to talk about. I had a blast. I hope you did as well. We will talk to you in 1 week's time. I hope you guys all have a wonderful week.